This is Mark from Not Square Design. I really need to do a nice intro one of these days, but just never seem to have the time. I have got a few questions for the client on this project, and what you're seeing with these color things here are the recap visuals, and maybe that's a little bit hard to understand, but they're just section cuts through the 3D LiDAR scan that I brought into this model, and then it allows me to take a look and determine what's going on. And so you can see across this roof, there was a lot of buildup and grime and stuff up here. So the fact that these are a little high, maybe okay, looks a little too high. So I have some adjusting to do, but the issue is that I need to build out all the brick detail. I need to build these parapets across the front and across the side, and then get the chimneys and all that stuff in here. Get this roof into the right type of roof, put the parapet on this side, and the brick detail work and stuff that goes onto a building like this. It's not exactly brick by brick, but it's a lot of very meticulous detail work. So before I do that, I guess been requesting for some feedback, and I know you've been out of town, but when you get an opportunity, I really need to discuss this, because I need to know basically what we're going to ask for from the URA. There's a possibility that some of this may be able to be somewhat corrected, and I'll show you why. If you notice, this roof fades into the roof here, and when I go down below, it looks really good, and then all of a sudden it starts to pop out in the back half, and it gets pretty extreme as we get further and further out. And you can see this one probably needs to be adjusted overall, but you can see it just gets more and more extreme as all of them do, and they all get worse towards this back end. This is almost right on, but it's not perfect. So, but again, it's being pushed up, and where that's occurring is if I go down in this crawl space, I started laying in some of the beams and stuff, and I need to put a section cut right at this location. I haven't put in that one yet, but it's items like this where this jack system, these screw jacks have been placed, and they've been raised to an extent that's actually lifting the floor on this back half. And so it must have been done in several occasions, or the whole front half of the building is sinking. And so even if we decide not to correct the issue, I think we need to make sure that it doesn't get worse and that you lose the building. So we've got the drainage issues that are on the south side, and probably need to look a little harder at just making sure that we don't have the same types of issues on the north side. And I'd like to speak to you about our URA approach before I wrap this up, to find out for certain if we are going to be whether or not we're going to ask for money for that. And so I missed it. There we go. Nope. Control Z. So I will get some other views. I want to add some other views into the way that this looks. Sorry, I paused that slightly because I was trying to correct this brick. And it's a little difficult to correct the brick using these, because these images, oops, I may have just painted that. Yep, I did. Oh, in fact, that's great, because now you can see that see-through image I just painted it brick color, but it's actually an object. It's called a face. I'm going to Control Z to get that to undo. Then I'll hit escape. And so it's hard to select through these. There's been a request I've had with Chief to give us PNGs that we can make transparent, because the issue is if they're full brightness, then in other views such as section views I can't see very well. So down here in the crawl space, let me turn this layer thing off. These jacks I think have been over lifted. It's that or this end has settled even greater. So determining which, I'll get more answers the more I continue to put all the beam work and stuff in here. But that's not part of our original, it's not part of my scope at this point. We're getting a little further along, and so I need to discuss how we're going to approach them, because what I'm concerned with is that your building gets further damaged to an extent that you actually risk losing it. So I will supply some other images and then we can discuss this. I went through and I changed some of the materials, and the EPDM helps the scan show up pretty clear. Also doing some changes on the way that it's got the floor and levels set up to match what I'm getting out of the scans, and we have to do some slight adjusting because I'm still getting these scans showing up above, but there was a lot of dirt and debris. But back here, this is where the problem starts to show up. As you can see, that just gets higher and higher and higher, and it's substantial. Looking back towards the front, the whole wall disappears into the floor, as it should, and I think it should be a little bit more, but I'll keep correcting that. But I'd like to get some answers on what we're going to actually try and correct in the field. So here in AutoCAD, you can see I've got the scans and stuff, but you can tell where it really is dropping off, and this is how I'm getting my heights determined. So this is the 2 layers of 1/2 inch. I've got a 5/8 inch finish wood, which we don't have installed yet, and then the 3/4 inch. So that's a 1/2, 1, and then 3/4 of that angled planking that's in the house, and that serves the same for both layers, or both levels I should say. Then there's the beam dimension, and you can see that's 9 1/4. It might be a little hard to read, but that's what that's reading if you can't see it on the screen. And then when I start to pull all this in, I've got to get the best average pitch, and so you can see here I'm above, here I'm passing through, and then here I'm quite a bit below, and this is where the whole system's been shoved upward. And so where this is dropped, what I've done is just kind of taken the average going up, creating straight lines off of places where I feel things have remained stable, but you can see the slope through here. And so using this as a guide for the size, it's just pushed up to where it should be, and then up here we'll have the roof. And right now I do need to correct the roof, and so what I've got is I'm showing about what is that, 5/8, 3 5/8, and 12 is how it's settled. And so when I flatten it out, it becomes very close to a 3 and 12. So I believe it probably was originally a 3/12 pitch. This averages out to a 1/12 pitch, and trying to draw all these individual trusses would be a nightmare because each one would have to be individual. So I'm going to frame it as if the trusses were running the way we would in modern day, but it shouldn't affect what we're doing because we're not changing what's going on up here, unless you want to do some of the repair work. And you can see there's, for the most part, like that member seems off, this one seems off, but if you look, there's something going on in the background for those, and the rest of them, they're fading off, meaning they didn't get them exactly at the on center that I have, which I am showing them at 16 inches on center. And as I get closer up in here, they match really well. And then it just, but that's just old construction, and it's just faded off a little bit. So just kind of getting a trace layout for this parapet, so I've got something to go off of to do this brickwork. But down in here, this is dirt, and I'm a little concerned about some of the excavation that's gone on over time and what that might be causing as we go through this. And so here in recap, this is just the lower floor system, and you can see that there's some dirt and stuff showing up there, and then trying to capture every bit of it is just such tight quarters that it's not completely captured, but we've got the basis for information, and what I've been working on is trying to get the to figure out where these beams are. And if I look underneath, you can see there's a beam here, and these tend to be about 8 by 8 beams through there, and there's a couple of those. But then in this mid portion, I've got to do a little more gauging around to try and figure out exactly what's holding this up, so we can try and correct it if we need to. But and again, that's where I'm kind of looking to, you know, what do we want to accomplish with this. So I'm going to show you here. I'm going to go to edit. Sometimes it'd be hard to grab this. There we go. And I can bring it down. Now let's confirm that. So there's a room in here, and then I've got all these posts, and you can kind of see them through there. If I go up top, it's a little easier to see, and I could actually turn off the dirt. As it's moving, you can see it better, but there's a post, there's one, and then our beam is across here. These are our joists, and so it's determining what we are resting on at this location. Still got some work to do there, but it looks like there's a room built out down here, and I was wondering if you knew if these are strong backs that were put in here. It's a common practice in the old days back east. And if you don't know what those are, please just give me a call and we can discuss it. But yeah, what I think has happened is these jack posts that were put in here have just been overly jacked, and it's pushed this whole floor system up. And on the other sections I've got drawn, you can really see it, especially on this particular one, that it's really shoved up quite a bit. So please give me a call. I'd love to go through this, discuss it, and see what we are trying to accomplish with URA before I get into the detail work.